Okay, today our guest is Lisa Dziekan, and she's with Clayco. They've got a really exciting project here. But before we jump into that, I always like to get our guest's background and try to find out how they got in our industry because economic development, and you are a former economic developer. It's always interesting to see how people get into that. So if you could just talk a little bit about your education, how you got where you're at today.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. So, I still consider myself in the area of economic development, even though I'm sort of on the private sector side, right? Just another seat at the table and another way of doing projects and making opportunities happen on behalf of communities. As background, I not from Chicago. I grew up in suburban Detroit. And I came here as so many people do, like, Chicago is a magnet for talent, right? Chicagoland. And so I came here in I guess it was my young 20s after college, and I stayed and I built a career here. And what I love about Chicagoland is that it's small enough where you have a network, right? It's like you and I met each other, we work with each other, and, we build a relationship, and people like to work with those that they can build a relationship. But it's large enough because it's a global center. And so I've been here for most of my professional life. I'm one of five girls. When I'm the number four. And so when the youngest was born, my mom shares a story that the doctor says, you have a basketball team. And she didn't know anything about sports. She's like, well, what does that mean? So I'm one of five girls. And, my educational background, I have an undergraduate degree in marketing and economics. And then did a master's program at UIC in urban planning and public affairs.
Yeah, it's a good background for exactly what you're doing. I do got to ask though, since you went to Michigan and you like, who do you root for whenever it's basketball season?
Well, yeah, I went to Michigan. I'm here, in Chicagoland with all of their teams. And then my two sons either, graduated or at Purdue. So a lot
Okay,
of people to root for. So that's good.
yeah,
I split my vote.
definitely Midwest background for sure. So
Yeah.
another fun one we always ask, like, what is besides like the two universities? What's a fun, unique personal fact about yourself?
So I would say, I've had a lot of jobs and, being one of five girls, like, I started work early because if I wanted spending money, that was, you went out and you worked. And so one of my most unique jobs is that I was the Easter bunny for a time. And so, on Easter's, I would be dressed up as the Easter bunny and, entertaining kids and such. And so I guess that's unique. I don't think everyone has dressed as the Easter bunny in their day.
No, that's the first time we've heard that. We've heard a lot of people that are musicians or in bands, and I think if I went back through all of our episodes, I could probably create a pretty cool band. But no Easter
I
Bunny,
bet.
so you are the first one there.
Well, keep it in your back pocket
Yeah,
if you ever need
you need to pull that out, come out of retirement. Yeah, for any type of
it. Yeah.
fun party coming up. So let's talk a little about the role in the company. So I always ask, like, it's probably like us. Every day is different, but what would like a typical day look like for you at Clayco?
Sometimes, I'm out working. So my footprint that I work in is really, Chicagoland and Illinois, and then more broadly the Midwest. So sometimes I'm traveling across Illinois if we're working on opportunities in, Southern, Central, or Chicagoland, so visiting in communities across the state. Sometimes I'm, having meetings, certainly here in the office. We're based in downtown Chicago in the old Jewelers building. So a beautiful historic building here in Chicago. The company purchased the building in recent months with a partner, and they're, redeveloping the building here in Chicago. So, there's no 2 days that are alike. And that's part of the fun of it, right? It's exciting.
Yeah, get to meet a lot of different people, see a lot of cool projects. And I don't know about you, but just like knowing about projects before their projects. And sometimes those are 10 years in advance.
Yeah, it's an interesting field for someone who has no patience like myself. Like I am like, make it happen. And so as you know, these projects take some of them a very long time to come to fruition. So that's always an interesting rub for me.
Definitely. And like, yeah, the larger the project, it seems like the longer it takes because I mean, businesses and developers, I mean, they're risk averse. Our role in economic development is to try to eliminate some of that risk to get them to
Yeah.
invest in our great state of Illinois. So Clayco itself, I know has multiple layers, but can you give a little bit of background just for the listeners on like who you guys are and what you guys specialize in?
Sure. So the company is over 40 years old. We have about 3,800 employees and we work and have offices across the United States. It was founded in St. Louis, and that's where our chairman, Bob Clark, still sits. We are headquartered in Chicago. And, as I shared, we have, offices across the United States. The parent company is Clayco. Underneath the parent company, you have a design and architecture arm. So that's Lamar Johnson Collaborative, or LJC. You have a development arm, or CRG. You have Clayco, the GC, and then you have other related companies that make up an integrated real estate company.
And so I know that the project we'll talk about today is more on the like supplier park distribution, big warehouse, the things that we love. But what other
Yeah.
types of projects do you guys do? It's not all just warehouses.
No, I mean, so certainly in the industrial space, as you said, we do a lot of, transportation and logistics projects. We also do a lot of advanced manufacturing work, right? A lot of work in the, energy, battery. Really, I think one of the pieces that sets us apart is very complex problems,
Hmm.
complex builds. That's where Clayco is one area that it shines. But, beyond the industrial space, we work in the residential space. So multifamily, high rise multifamily buildings, healthcare, higher education, life sciences. So we work across a lot of different markets. And I think one of the opportunities and challenges right now is understanding which markets are, have capital, which markets there's opportunities to move forward. And of course, I should talk about, the mission critical space, or the data center space.
Oh, yeah.
Clayco is a top 5 data center builder
Nice.
under the brand of Clayco Compute. So that's been a big area of growth, as you can imagine, for Clayco.
Yeah, it's probably interesting. I mean, just being in economic development, watching the ebbs and flows and supply and demand, or like how much housing's changed in the last 5 years. But then, yeah, also the rise of just data centers. And it seems like
Yeah.
everybody's chasing power. And then you get to play a little bit of site selector. And as you said, where's the money at? Where can you get investment? But what has the best environment in order to make these things successful? And so that's a
Yeah.
lot
And
of pieces.
it's been interesting because across my career, earlier in my career, I was at Arthur Andersen and their real estate advisory services group. So doing economic analysis and site selection type work. And then I was at World Business Chicago doing more traditional public private economic development work, working with counties across the region. And now being on the private sector side, but again, still sort of working in that economic development realm with communities across Illinois and Midwest to attract investment.
Yes. And so that's, I don't know about you, but I feel like recently the state of Illinois has done a really good job when it comes to economic development. I know Intersect just transitioned over to Illinois' EDC, but the marketing
Yes.
side, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and even under JB Pritzker's leadership, it seems like all three of them they got some really good synergy going. And it seems like there's announcements all over the place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're moving in a very strong direction. One of the pieces of the work that they're moving forward that I'm excited about, because I think it was missing perhaps, or just not, it wasn't as developed as it needed to be, is the vetted sites program.
But yeah.
As you know, it's like when site selectors are coming through and they have a project, or an end user's looking for a site, they're not going to wait, 6, 12, 18 months to get a site ready. And so Illinois needs to be at levels where other states are in terms of delivering shovel-ready sites, and that's a challenge, right? And so it's an area that they're really pushing on. It's an exciting to see happen.
Yeah, and so they follow that up too, of not just saying like we're looking for the current sites, but they've had grants in the past, matching grants to help get that infrastructure, to make it actually shovel ready. So they're hitting it from both ends, which has been phenomenal. I've been at this, 18 years, and I think we've got more tools now in Illinois than we ever have before. So it's a really exciting time to do this. And then, yeah, with that, let's talk a little bit about the project that you've got with, our darling here in Normal, Illinois, with Rivian Automotive and all their rapid growth across the street, which you've been a major part of.
Yeah, I mean, certainly an exciting project. Clayco's proud to be a part of it in building out both the supplier park and helping them to expand their presence there. And now you may know that we are partnered with them for the work that they're doing in Georgia. But to continue to help them grow as a company has been, an absolute honor to be working with them, and in working with the partners in Normal. I'd love to hear from your perspective, sort of what you've seen in terms of the growth there based on sort of this investment, and some of the recent investments that we've heard in terms of new suppliers coming in to serve there.
So yeah, when I got here, I think it was like 6 years ago, Rivian had about 300 employees, and they literally came to us and they said, "Hey, we're only going to take up about a third of our space. Can you help us find somebody to share the space?" And then it seemed like every month, every quarter, they kept taking up more and more, getting more buy-in, blowing the doors off the place, expanding. And I remember them mentioning it felt like 1,000 at a clip. Like, we're gonna add another 1,000 jobs, then another 1,000 jobs. And we're like, well, we need to prepare the community for this growth. So
Yeah.
we've been honestly trying to play catch up. But in economic development, we actually, GLT did a really good article on this for Manufacturing Month, which is this month, but talking about why, as economic developers, we love advanced manufacturing so much. And it's because when you throw that in your in-plan model, the multiplier effect from that is amazing. Not that we don't like, your healthcare and your quality of life and quality of place, and of course, finance and insurance, but we know, and the number one question I got, when are the suppliers going to get here? Because it had to, come down to Rivian selecting a supplier in the first place, because as a startup, they were testing a lot of different ones. But now, thanks to your build and some of their growth, those are all starting to come about, and we can, we'll continue to get those announcements. But it's been great because I always joke, Rivian's a gift that keeps on giving. Because in the
Mm,
beginning, people were like, "Is this real? This is a startup." It wasn't a major name, but the major names started investing in Rivian, and then once those adventure vehicles came about, and now with the Amazon vans too, and you can definitely tell by their headlights, who it is. That's when everything started to become real. And then now the suppliers are coming in. So it's becoming even more real. I like the fact that when we create a model and we say you're going to get the supplier, that indirect, and you're going to get the induced, it's finally catching up, 6 years after the fact. But I just, the ripple effect and the excitement that comes from it, I don't want to say told you so, but that's kind of how I feel as an economic developer, is like, this will come, but it's also making the case that they could really have built that supplier park anywhere between here and Georgia to serve both of them. And so we're like, we want this here. Even R2 line. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth with us in Georgia on who was going to get R2. Luckily,
mhm.
because they were familiar with our area and the environment. And thanks to DCO and the governor's office stepping up, we landed that project. So we like to see the growth. But we do need the housing now. And at the same time, everybody else needs the housing. In the beginning, I remember saying, like, we need 4,000 units yesterday, because you can't add 8,000 jobs and no homes. And so we are playing catch up, but the excitement and the ripple effect from those suppliers coming in, even, 50 jobs, 100 jobs, 80 at a clip, any other time of year, and any other project. Like, if Rivian happened all at once, they would have made nationwide news. But it was steady growth from that 300 up to 8,000. Who knows how far they're going to go with all the suppliers. But because it was like, 2,000 at a time over the span of 5 years, it is getting attraction. But around here, people are kind of like, unless you work there, it's off to the side. But
Mm.
when it comes to taxes, when it comes to investment in the community and the restaurants, like, holy, it's hard to go anywhere without seeing a Rivian worker. Not that long ago, post pandemic, a lot of the hotels were struggling. Well, not ours, because we didn't have the houses, the contractors, anyone that's developing the robotics in there with them, and our chocolate factory, Ferrero, depending on what side of town you went to, our hotels were full. So we didn't
Yeah.
really have the same impact that a lot of communities did. So their ripple effect has been amazing. The energy, pardon my dad jokes when it comes to all the EV puns I'll throw out there. But no, the energy has been great. And it's just like, I feel like we've got a really good thing going momentum wise. We just need to capitalize on it when it comes to some housing and some quality of place to keep it going. But it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, you are creating a true economic anchor, right? And
Yes.
starting to see the spin-off events, activity happening from that. And to your point, it doesn't happen overnight. And so, similar story, we're working on the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park here in Chicago, which is
Nice.
at the former US Steel site. So the US Steel site has been vacant for, I think close to 30 years, a 400 acre sitting on our lakefront that, we haven't found a development solution for. And so now there's an opportunity to move forward the first 130 acres of the, Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park. It's going to be anchored by, Sci Quantum, some university uses, by DARPA uses. So that will act similarly, as an economic anchor for other suppliers to come in around it. And so it doesn't happen overnight. These are large scale investments. These are difficult builds and complex partnerships, but when you're able to bring those pieces together, it's important work.
I completely agree. I know I did a little time up in Tinley Park, and I remember coming from Decatur, Illinois, which was like heavier manufacturing. And there were some big buildings there. But once you got up in Chicagoland, you started seeing like some logistics parks. Like, these things were huge. And so when we got to take a tour of your facility, without the walls up, and I'm like, oh, that is so long. Like, how long that building actually was for that 1 million square feet that's there. But it's one where when people come to town, they usually come into the heart, they come into ISU, they go shopping on the retail corridor. And I'm always like, just take a trip out there, and you're going to see that sea. Once you go over that hill, then people are like, oh, like, you don't really realize, how big an auto plant is. And it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, the scale of it is really pretty amazing.
Yes. Yeah, and again, like gift that keeps on giving, something you definitely have to see. And yeah, one of the things we always ask, and I know that you are more from the Chicago area, so maybe not your perfect day in Bloomington-Normal, but if you are going to show off the state of Illinois, and we go to Chicago quite a bit, actually, you and I were just up there for a site selection conference with Christy George for Intersect, or sorry, Illinois EDC. I'll remember that one of these
It'll
days.
take us all a minute
Yeah,
to flip that switch from Illinois, from Intersect
to
to Illinois
Illinois.
EDC.
But yeah, if you are up there and you're going to show off, World Chicago wise, like, where do you have to go? Actually, I'm going to be up there in a couple of weeks to see my daughter at DePaul. So where
Oh,
should I
fun.
eat? Where should I go around to show off the area?
Oh my gosh, there's so many amazing restaurants. I do like sort of hitting up some of the new restaurant scene, whether that's in Fulton Market, or I love walking along the Riverwalk. And I would always say, it's when you're talking about sort of, pitching Illinois, if you will, to me, it's about getting people here in person. I think the headlines, it's challenging to get behind some of the noise and the headlines that people see about Illinois and about Chicagoland. But when you get leaders here on the ground and they walk and they see the beautiful architecture, they see the river walk, they see the investment that's happening in Normal, like then I think it shows them a different layer. And to me, one of the things that I always like to do is try to, it's one thing for you or I as economic development folks to sort of talk about how great these communities are and why they should invest here. But it's another layer and opportunity when you connect them with other C suites, right?
Yeah.
When you set up opportunities for them to meet with some of the C-suite companies of folks that are in these communities so that they can understand, hey, what's the talent pipeline here? What's it actually feel like to be operating in this space? So you can get sort of beyond the noise and really help make some meaningful connections. That's when I think things really start to come together. You get people here, you bring them in for a site visit, and you start to build relationships, not just with you, but with other business leaders. Some of the most successful pitches we've done is like we've brought together not just business leaders, but university leaders and other people from across the innovation ecosystem so that they see this is really a whole ecosystem here that's supporting them in their growth. And I don't know, I think Midwest might be a little unique in that. I don't think if you go to some of these other areas across the country, you're going to have 20, 25 people coming out to welcome you to Illinois and talking about, here's how we can work with you, here's how we can partner with you. So maybe it's that Midwest piece that's sort of really welcoming. But that's one of the things that I really enjoy about Illinois, Chicagoland, et cetera.
No, I agree, and I'll give Chicago the nod too. There's something about the environmental psychology. I just remember getting off, the metro line and being in that sea of people, and we're all going, and it's just like there is something about that. And it's again, if you're a site selector and you're looking at us, we're kind of a row on a spreadsheet, but ideally, like you said, you get them in town. So I think I told you I was honored to join the governor's office and Illinois EDC to go over to Japan for the
Hmm.
Midwest Japan conference, and it's exactly that. It's to put a face to the name, press the flesh, tell them about what's going on, and then next year get them back here to the States and to show off the area. And that's how you attract that investment. But as you mentioned, connecting them with somebody that's like them. So here in Bloomington Normal, we have Bridgestone, which is a Japanese company. So it's like, you might not know what it's like to work with us, but you can talk to them and they're very successful. So same with Rivian, but you're right. There is something about the Midwest and Chicago that we do show up as a team, as Team Illinois, as partners to say, like, hey, we're going to welcome you. We're going to show you how this works. And because if you're successful, we're successful. And I think Illinois EDC and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity with the governor's office has been very good about going on the road, doing a road show, bringing people back, and basically showing off the state. And I think that's why you're starting to see, and if anybody's out there wants to subscribe, like DCO and the governor's office, you can just subscribe to the newsletter, get their updates. There's always, and across Illinois, it seems like there's announcements weekly about something really cool happening.
Yeah, I mean, I hear often that we don't do a good enough job of telling our story. And it is hard to break through the noise, certainly, right? And so, unless you're paying attention to that, there's a lot of noise. But I think once you tune in, you come here, you talk to people, you see what's happening on the ground, then you start to understand what the real opportunity is. And it's different. It's a much different story than what you may hear otherwise.
Definitely, you can't really describe the state or Chicago by saying it's a windy city. Like you have to come here and see, like, well, there's renovations happening all the time. There's cranes all over the place. And yeah, so the new builds are very cool. Why they're up there or down here or anywhere in Illinois, is there like one food item that like you have to say, like, why you're here, you have to go eat this one thing?
I don't. I'm not gonna say pizza because, like,
You're gonna start a pizza war over who's got the best, yeah.
yeah, everyone's got their favorite pizza. I wouldn't say one specific thing. I would just sort of look at what cuisine you like, whether it's pizza or sushi or Italian, and just sort of look at, who's got the latest thing because it's fun to just sort of go and check out the latest thing, and sometimes that's here in Chicago, that might be downtown. It also might be in the neighborhoods. It's an amazing opportunity to go and sort of discover new neighborhoods. I love eating through the neighborhoods, right? My husband and I take turns sort of planning dates in the neighborhoods. And it's like we find a restaurant and we go to the conservatory or whatever it is. But it's a great way of discovering new places, whether, you're in Decatur or Normal or in a neighborhood here in Chicago. That's kind of a way I like to discover
Check
a
out the
place.
local flavor. Yeah, I agree. We actually stumbled upon one that's our go-to now, which is funny that our daughter ended up where she's at, but it's RJ Grunt's right next to
Sure.
the zoo. So we went to the zoo and there's a pizza place around the corner and the wait was too long. So we walked back around. I'm like, what's this? And we walked in, it was like straight out of the 70s. We love it though. And that's definitely the way to do it, is to work your way through. And another thing that's so unique about Chicago is like when something pops up or there's something new, people will stand in line forever just to go try that one little thing.
I don't know that I'm standing in line for that.
I'm
I'll
not
wait for
either,
it
but
because
my
no,
daughter does it.
I don't, maybe it's a generational thing, like they want that. I'll wait a couple of weeks
It's
and
part of, yeah, we
experience
let it
it.
die down a little, but I remember, like, even my wife back in the day, she stood in line forever to go try the, what is it, Kuma's burger from that metal bar, and I think they just made some, like, 2025 top list burger in the nation. So it's
Yeah.
like there's always
Well,
known for food.
let me ask you a question. You talked about the challenge of housing, but what are you most excited about in the next couple of years for Bloomington and Normal?
Oh, wow. For us, it's, I mean, it's housing. Housing's coming. So that's a cool thing. It's not that to say that we've solved it, but we're doing a lot of infill project, which I love. As like, I mean, I'm not a planner, and I know my planner friends would back me up. A lot of times we've done a lot of urban sprawl and the neighborhoods out kind of out in the middle of nowhere because it's easier to develop. We have some really cool projects that are coming. One of them at downtown Bloomington is the old State Farm building. So that is an Art Deco building that's being fully renovated. They're looking at urban equities at doing a restaurant on that top floor, and then filling the rest of it up with some apartments that are be more workforce housing style. Then another one we've got coming is north of our country club, which is also an old Verizon site, which is just a giant parking lot right now. So those revitalization projects I'm really excited about because yeah, we might get the data center, and I love getting the big projects. That's a lot of fun. But if we want
Hmm.
to keep that momentum going, and more importantly, keep our all of our students around, we have like 25,000 college kids. They can't afford to live here anymore. So to me, it's seeing those really imaginative renovations happening on the housing side that will keep this momentum going. So if we want Rivian to be successful, State Farm to be successful, we have to prepare the next generation. So we're really focused on housing, which is something I haven't done in my career, but something we started about 5 years ago, saying, hey, we need to add this to our book of work because if we don't have the homes, we don't have the talent. We don't have the talent, we
Yeah.
lose.
Yeah. No, I think that's super smart. I think more and more economic developers are understanding the relationship. Someone shared, like a home is where a job goes to sleep at night, right? And
Yeah, that's
to
a good
me,
one.
that like totally brought it home. And why it's like, well, yes, of course. It's like if you don't have people, if you don't have a place for people to go to sleep at night, how are you going to have the jobs? And it just doesn't, it's not a sustainable solution to be having people commute from so far away. It's going to be increasingly important. I think, Chicagoland and Illinois has always fared well when you look at the cost of living. But, we need to build more housing all across the state in order for that to continue to be so.
I agree because we have like I think one of our number one asset. I mean, we've got really good power here, and logistics is amazing, but it's talent. Like the university system, so many great kids, so much great talent. It's just like, but they got to be able to afford to live here. So it's our responsibility as economic developers. I'd say to be more holistic and focused on the community development side where the housing lands and getting that quality of place lined up so they do want to stick around. So
Yeah.
something we're working on.
One one opportunity that I have now is that I'm now serving on the Illinois Community College Board, and I feel very passionately about that we need to open up sort of our talent pipelines,
Mhm.
our workforce, in a way to be more holistic. And so, leveraging those community colleges across Illinois is an advantage that we have already and that we can do more with. And so I think we're going to see more and more there in terms of how do we connect, job growth to the community colleges in a more intentional way.
Definitely. I'm a huge supporter of community college. I was literally at Richland Community College in Decatur for about 10 years trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So, yeah, I'm a
Have you
product.
figured it out yet?
I think so. Yeah, that's why I'm working on a PhD now. So it's all coming together. But yeah, I'm a community college kid that took some time to find things out, but figured it out, and I love what I do, and it's worked out really well. But there's so much potential there too. I'm always about the underemployed because while I was that community college kid, I was also a bartender. And so for
Mhm.
10 years, it's like, I know I can do more if I found a niche. And sure enough, going through that, then Millikan, then Notre Dame, and then now this is just like, you just have to find that path. And I think that's the great thing about community colleges because you can test things out and find your path.
And the on-ramp, and I think that just makes for a much easier on-ramp for people that aren't quite sure what direction they wanna travel.
Yep. Yep. It's all connected. Speaking of which, you got the background in economic development. And the final question we always ask everybody is why does economic development matter?
Certainly it's about bringing, quality jobs to a community, right? And tax base. I think for
Yeah.
quality of life, economic development matters, on both fronts. You can't have a growing community if you don't have a strong tax base, if you don't have jobs. And so to me, that's at its heart. And then if you just sort of look at it at a community level, you need, retail corridors that will support people's, interests and retail needs, neighborhood goods. So all the way from, large scale projects to, retail corridors, like all of those things are important. I live in Evanston, so I serve on the economic development committee there, and so you have opportunities as it relates to Northwestern University, and then you also have challenges. It's like how do we keep our retail corridors strong and growing? And so all of those things are important for just the quality of where
Yes.
people want to live, stay, and grow a family.
Exactly. Nope, that's it. It's all like mix that in with a little bit of growth and wealth for everybody, and you've got the perfect formula.
Yes, I think so.
Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to cover? Actually, website. Let's like if people want to find out more, and I'll put it in the show notes. But where should they go to if they're just listening to find out more about you guys?
Well, certainly Clayco has a large, website presence, and so you can go to our website and learn more about who we are. If you're in Chicagoland or really Illinois, the president of Chicagoland office is Michael Fosnot. He has a great LinkedIn presence, and so I'm going to shout him out. It's a great way to stay connected with what's happening both across Chicagoland and Illinois. Both ways are, just sort of good to learn more about who we are, what we're doing, how to connect with us. Given that we are working across that continuum on the real estate space, there's a lot of ways that we can partner with people.
Very cool. Is there anything else you wanted to cover while I got you on here?
No, I just, appreciate the opportunity. I know that we recently worked with you on touring the Rivian site with the elected officials, and I thought that was fantastic. To me, it's about bringing people together. And so more opportunities to do that is what I look to do across the state.
Well, we look forward to your continued success. Keep keeping Illinois going and Bloomington-Normal, and hopefully we'll have some more projects for you soon.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much, Patrick, for having me.
Awesome.